He was a man who moved faster than the eye could follow, and yet, in the end, something invisible stopped him completely. A legend, a fighter, a cultural revolution in motion. Bruce Lee didn't just change martial arts, he shattered the boundaries of what people believe the human body and mind could achieve. From underground rooftop fights in Hong Kong to Hollywood superstardom, his life looked unstoppable. But the most disturbing question is not how he lived, it's how he died. Because even today, more than 50 years later, his sudden collapse still doesn't fully make sense. Doctors disagreed, witnesses contradicted each other, and theories, some scientific, some controversial, continue to fight for dominance over the truth. Was it a medical condition? A tragic reaction to medication? Heat? Water? Or something no one noticed until it was too late? To understand his death, you have to start at the beginning. And the beginning is far from ordinary. Bruce Lee entered the world on November 27, 1940, in San Francisco's Chinatown. His parents were performers traveling with a Cantonese opera company. Life was already unstable before he even took his first breath. Shortly after his birth, the family returned to Hong Kong, and almost immediately history turned violent. War arrived, Japanese forces occupied Hong Kong, and the city transformed into a place of fear, scarcity, and survival. Food became limited, safety became uncertain, and childhood became something stolen too early. While other children played freely, Bruce grew up watching struggle everywhere. That environment shaped him, not softly but permanently. It built something inside him that would later define his entire life: intensity. Even as a child, he refused to stand still. He appeared in films as a baby, then as a child actor, quickly becoming part of Hong Kong cinema. By his teenage years, he wasn't trying to act anymore. He was already working in the industry. But behind the camera success, life at home was unstable. His father struggled with addiction. School became another battleground. Teachers saw a student who was intelligent but uncontrollable, passionate but defiant. That combination, energy without structure, would soon lead him somewhere unexpected. The master, who almost rejected him. At 13 years old, Bruce was introduced to martial arts through a friend who suggested discipline might help him focus his restless energy. That introduction led him to one of the most important figures in martial arts history, Ip Man, the legendary Wing Chun master. But Bruce wasn't welcomed immediately. In fact, he was initially rejected. The reason had nothing to do with skill. It had to do with identity. Bruce's mixed heritage made some traditional circles see him as an outsider. In a time when lineage mattered deeply, that was enough to shut doors. But fate didn't leave it there. A mentor intervened, convincing Ip Man to accept him. And once Bruce stepped into training, something changed quickly. He didn't treat martial arts like a hobby. He treated it like obsession. He trained constantly, questioned everything, and refused to accept limitations blindly. But even while learning discipline, another side of him remained active. He still fought in the streets, not for sport, not for show, but because confrontation seemed to follow him wherever he went. One incident changed everything. A rooftop fight escalated into violence, leaving another student injured. The situation became serious enough that his family feared legal consequences. And that fear forced a decision. Bruce Lee would leave Hong Kong. America, the second beginning. At 18, Bruce arrived in the United States. No fame, no money, no protection, just ambition. He settled first in San Francisco, then moved to Seattle, where he began rebuilding his life from zero. He worked small jobs, studied, and trained whenever he could. But something important began happening during this time, something that would later change martial arts forever. He started teaching. Not traditional teaching, not rigid systems. He created his own approach, later called Junfan Gung Fu. But more important than technique was philosophy. Bruce believed martial arts should not be locked inside tradition. It should adapt, evolve, survive reality, not ceremony. That belief made him controversial, but it also made him powerful. His first students came from different backgrounds, breaking social expectations of the time. He taught everyone willing to learn, regardless of race or background. That decision alone challenged martial arts culture in ways people were not prepared for. And slowly word spread. Something different was happening in Bruce Lee's training. Something unpredictable. Something alive. The man who refused limits. By the early 1960s, Bruce entered university life while continuing martial arts training. He studied philosophy, questioning ideas from both Eastern and Western traditions. But his real laboratory was still physical. He tested everything: speed, power, efficiency, reaction. And in 1964, he appeared at a martial arts demonstration in California that would change everything. He stunned audiences with explosive movement, control, and precision. His famous one-inch punch became legendary. His speed was unsettling to observers. People struggled to understand what they were seeing. He wasn't just demonstrating techniques. He was challenging belief systems, but with recognition came tension, because not everyone agreed with his direction. And soon, that tension would escalate into one of the most debated confrontations in martial arts history. The fight that never stopped being questioned. A private challenge was arranged between Bruce and a Chinese martial artist named Wang Jackman. There were no cameras, no official rules, no clear record, only witnesses and conflicting memories. Some said the fight lasted minutes. Others said it lasted far longer. Some claimed Bruce dominated. Others said it was evenly matched or even inconclusive. Even years later, no version fully aligned. What is clear is this: the fight changed Bruce, not because of victory or defeat, but because of dissatisfaction. He began questioning everything he had learned. Traditional systems, he felt, were too rigid, too symbolic, too disconnected from reality. So he began evolving his own philosophy further. He studied boxing, fencing, wrestling, and movement systems from different cultures. He stripped away what he considered unnecessary. What remained became something new, a philosophy, not just a style, Jeet Kune Do. And from that point forward, Bruce Lee was no longer just a martial artist. He was a disruptor, the rise of a global icon. Hollywood eventually came calling. His roles in television and film introduced him to global audiences. Then came major success with films like Enter the Dragon, which turned him into an international icon. But even as fame grew, something else was building quietly in the background. Fatigue, pressure, physical strain, and unexplained medical episodes. Because behind the perfect image of strength, there were moments where his body was already showing signs of instability. One collapse on set raised concerns, but it passed. It was treated as an isolated incident. No one realized it might have been a warning. The day everything changed. On July 20th, 1973, Bruce went to meet film producer Raymond Chow and actress Betty Ting Pei for work related to a project titled Game of Death. At some point during the day, he complained of a headache. He was given a pain relief medication containing both aspirin and a mild sedative. He lay down to rest and never woke up. When news broke, shock spread instantly. A man known for peak physical condition, gone at 32. No warning. No clear explanation. Just silence. The questions that never stopped. The official explanation pointed to cerebral edema, brain swelling, possibly triggered by a reaction to medication. But from the beginning, something felt incomplete. How could someone so physically disciplined collapse so suddenly? That question created space for theories, and over time, multiple explanations emerged. One suggested a hidden sensitivity to medication. Another pointed to heat and environmental stress. Another argued that prior collapse episodes hinted at an underlying condition. Then came a more unusual theory: overhydration. Some researchers suggested that excessive water intake could have disrupted his body's sodium balance, leading to brain swelling. Others focused on a surgical procedure he had undergone years earlier, suggesting it may have affected his body's ability to regulate heat. Each theory explained part of the mystery, but none explained everything. A family shadowed by tragedy. After Bruce's death, his wife Linda was left to raise their children alone. Their son, Brandon, later entered acting and martial arts, carrying his father's legacy forward. But tragedy struck again when Brandon died during a film accident in 1993. The pattern shocked the public. A family defined by strength, repeatedly touched by loss. Their daughter, Shannon, later took responsibility for preserving Bruce's legacy, helping introduce his philosophy to new generations through media projects and foundations. But even with legacy preserved, the mystery remained unresolved. The final theory, no single answer. Today, most modern interpretations agree on one uncomfortable conclusion. There may not be a single cause. Instead, it may have been a combination of factors: a vulnerable physiological state, environmental heat stress, fluid imbalance, prior warning signs that were not fully understood. Individually, none may have been fatal. Together, they may have created a chain reaction the body could not recover from. Not a dramatic ending, not a heroic one, but a fragile biological system reaching its limit. The man who defined control lost it in silence. Bruce Lee built his entire philosophy around control of body, mind, and movement. Speed without waste, power without excess, efficiency without hesitation. Yet, in the end, his body failed not in battle, but in balance. And that contradiction is what keeps his story alive. Because he was not just a fighter. He was a question, a challenge to limits, a reminder that even the strongest systems have breaking points, and even legends remain human. If there is a final truth behind his death, it may not be found in a single explanation. It may be found in the unsettling reality that sometimes even the most extraordinary lives can end in the most ordinary biological limits. And that is what makes his story unforgettable.